So hello everybody, welcome to our ABM presentation with Bindy Griffin from LawView. This was the missing talk from our Tech Marketers Conference, so it's a real privilege, and thank you Bindy for spending a little bit of time today to share your presentation so that we can edit it and make it available for people to watch on demand as well. Hugely important part of the marketing mix for many of us to understand account-based marketing. And after last year's conference, when we had quite a big talk around kind of best practice and how some international companies are leveraging ABM methodologies, it's really fantastic to have a New Zealand case study and hear a little bit about your journey with LawView into ABM models. So with that, we are recording, and I'm going to hand over to Bindy, and if we've got some time at the end, we might be able to have some questions and a bit of a discussion. Feel free to post any questions that you have in chat or note them down and save them for afterwards. And we'd be more than happy to do that as well. But otherwise, welcome, Bindy.
Awesome. Thanks, Justin. Thanks for having me on. As you said, I'm Bindy Griffin. I'm the Senior Director of Brand and Growth at LawView. LawView is a SaaS company based in Tauranga. We provide a legal workspace for in-house legal teams. So if you think about your Sparks or your Fonterras of the world and they have a legal team internally, that's who we provide our software for. Our customers are mostly in the US, Australia, UK, and some in New Zealand as well. Our employee base is really across the world, but the bulk is in New Zealand, which is really cool, and actually in Tauranga. So it's quite a cool story of bringing SaaS out of the regions of New Zealand. We're going through rapid growth and are really ambitious. So our lead generation tactics are really important as part of that growth, and ABM obviously is a big part of that, which I'll talk about. Before LawView, I was at another SaaS company. So I've been in B2B SaaS for about 5 or 6 years now, I think. Before that, I was in tourism doing marketing. And then before that, I was actually a lawyer in practice for a couple of years. So people tease me and say I've gone full circle now working for a legal tech company, which is a bit ironic, I guess. So yeah, I actually realized I've kind of coordinated my outfit with my slides, which is a bit embarrassing, but I like bright colors, obviously. Anyway, I'm here to share some of my experiences with account-based marketing with you. I'm certainly not an expert. I'll talk about my high-level experiences, like what I think's worked, what hasn't worked. But more specifically, like what I've got on the slide here, I'll start by talking about what I think ABM is and what it isn't, because it is a really broad, widely used term. I'll talk about why do it at all. I'll spend most of my time talking about LawView as a case study and kind of what we've been doing and what we will be doing soon. And I'll just round it off with a couple of takeaways on my top 6 learnings. So please feel free to ask questions along the way, like button, whatever, keen to just have a conversation along the way. So what is ABM? I actually personally think it should be called something more like account-based strategy, because that's really what it is. It's a strategy to target accounts that you know you want as a customer. The second reason I think it should be called something more like account-based strategy is because it is a holistic program that's designed full funnel in the context of everything else going on in your business. And it really should be a partnership between sales and marketing. The second point I've got there is that it needs to be hyper-targeted. So you know exactly who you're targeting, and really you're not bothered with anyone outside of that, to put it bluntly. It's hyper-specific, and what I mean by that is that there's no point in being hyper-targeted if you're not going to display generic messaging and content. They need to know that you get them and your product or service is for them. And what it's not, at least in my opinion, is spray and pray. It's not cold outreach. It's not sales or marketing only, and it's not inbound marketing. There are probably some crossover principles around, relevant content with inbound marketing, but inbound is sort of under a premise of like, they will come to you, they'll find you. Whereas account-based marketing is almost the opposite. It's like, I know who I want and I'm going to go after them. So why do ABM at all? Well, it's clearly a form of lead generation. So that's a good reason in its own right to do it. But another good reason is to increase conversion rates. So, if the leads you are bringing in are targeted, they should be a better fit for your product. That will depend on what you were doing before, because changes in conversion rates are always relative. And so the example I'll give is actually at Lawview. Before we did ABM, we just waited for people to book a demo on our website. And so we had a really high conversion rate because people were already, if you book a demo, you've already got really high intent, but the volume was really low. But generally speaking, if you move from a broad strokes lead generation activity to a hyper-targeted ABM activity, your conversion rate should go up. Another reason is to increase your average contract value or your ACV, and I'll probably refer to that a couple of times in these slides. Because ABM leads are higher quality leads from your ideal customer profile, you should have a smaller portion of your customer base being in the low quality bucket, so to speak. It's also easier to scale when you're not trying to be everything to everyone, which can often happen with inbound. And something is sort of a byproduct of it is that if you don't convert them as a lead in that moment, it's possible your ABM has at least made them aware of your company. So brand awareness is an unintentional byproduct of doing ABM sometimes, depending on how you're running your program, obviously. But at Lawview, we've gone from bringing in about 50 MQLs, marketing qualified leads a month, just over 12 months ago to about 550. So it's really 9 or 10x. And ABM has been a core part of that strategy. As I said earlier, previously we were relying on people who came to us through direct organic paid search channels, and we wondered why our ACV was lower than we wanted. So ABM now contributes to 50% of marketing qualified leads per month, and our ACV is on the rise. This is an interesting kind of insight we had recently with LinkedIn. So we rely on LinkedIn campaigns quite a lot for some of our initiatives with ABM, and they came to us with some feedback and said that, do you know you're actually outperforming your top competitors despite spending 61% less, which was quite interesting. And I'll circle back later on why we think we've been able to do that in some of my takeaways, but it was a really interesting insight. So on to Lawview specifically, and actually like how we've been doing ABM. Please, again, like ask questions. I see there's a few things in the chat. Yeah, ACV, average contract value. So the way we've been doing ABM is not exactly how we'll be doing it going forward. So I'll kind of talk about both approaches. So the way we've been doing it is that we've targeted mid-market size companies in specific industries, which we've assumed we're dealing with complex legal issues and therefore have a fit for our product. So we think insurance or healthcare, they've got big legal issues and they need software to be able to manage that workflow. And so we target industries like this and we show them hyper-targeted ads on LinkedIn. And you can see in a couple of examples in this slide of some old ads that we have up. So it very much is like, if you were a lawyer in the healthcare industry, you would think it's quite relevant to you. I've seen a question there. How do you establish your reach across industries on LinkedIn? Not all are there yet in some sectors. Sorry, do you mind just sort of clarifying that one a little bit, Gary?
Yeah, so what I was made, I'm being quite selfish here. LinkedIn's great for certain sectors. So if you work in the tech industry, if you work in, main service companies, I work in the health sector. Not all BODs, specialists, doctors are on LinkedIn. So when you're trying to establish using a platform like LinkedIn to reach, how do you establish whether you're going to get to 50%, 60%, 70%? So it's kind of trying to understand, is that platform really giving me the reach that I need, given that that particular sector ain't really all there yet? And I'm saying yet because Australia is our crystal ball, because they are getting there, but we're just a little bit more immature on LinkedIn in some sectors.
Yeah, and it's a good point. I mean, we have one industry of our selected industries that's a bit like that. Local government in the US is very much like that. A lot of them aren't there, and so we just spend less on that segment. And you'll see some other tactics as well later on, and perhaps they're more relevant to your target audience. That's a good consideration when you're planning your account-based marketing strategy for sure. Cool. So once we, just going back to the way we've sort of been doing ABM to date, so we surface these hyper-targeted ads to a hyper-targeted list of companies in an industry. And then once we've generated a lead, we've actually been passing it on to our SDR function, so sales development reps, and we're quite lucky to have that function. We didn't send them to an email nurture flow, which we do with other leads, because we want the interaction with LawView to just become more and more personalized, not less. So we knew that these leads are in our target range, they're in an industry, they've got the right job title. And so given we have that SDR function, we labeled them as an MQL and worthy of an SDR's time to personalize, look on their LinkedIn, find something else about them and put that in your reply. And saying that if they've dealt with an SDR and they don't ever get to the point where they want to see a demo, they will then go back into our database and receive marketing emails. So that's kind of looking at the channels, obviously with LinkedIn, SDRs and emails. But in terms of the content, we really have been tailoring it to the audiences, so hyper-specific to that hyper-targeted segment. And this is just one example of a white paper that we've targeted to high growth companies. So we have various other pieces of content for industries as well as team types. So we use white papers as our conversion point before handing the MQL over to an SDR. We also have case studies, webinars, landing pages as other content, which are great for nurturing, for nurture material. So we've had real success with the volume of MQL generation with these campaigns, but we haven't yet experimented. And so we're now trying something new, probably a more traditional ABM approach, which I'll explain now. But the objective is not just to try for the sake of an experiment, which is great to be able to do. But as a business, we would like to decrease the cost to acquire contracts, and particularly like lower value contracts. And the second one there is to increase the conversion rate of high value contracts. So with that in mind, we've designed what we call ABX, not ABM. I'm not really sure what the X stands for, but it sounds cool. Maybe like cross-team collaboration or excellence or something like that. We split our customer base into groups based on their size. We have customers of all sizes. We really do. Like we've got some companies that have a legal team of one lawyer using our product, or they're of the size where they've got 200 lawyers in a company, which I can't even imagine having 200 lawyers within your business. But yep, that's the spread. But the goal is really to have the bulk of our customer base sitting in the mid-market bucket, which is the second sort of column you can see in this slide, and then the lower end of enterprise. There's a couple of reasons for that. They seem to have a faster sales cycle and a faster implementation, and actually more success with our product. They also have appropriate ACVs, and that's that average contract value again. So instead of focusing only on mid-market like we were before, we're actually going to take a different approach to each segment. So the smaller companies, which is that grey column on the far left, we've excluded from our ABX program altogether. They're not going to be sent to the sales team until they've really booked a demo. We're going to nurture 100% of those small companies via marketing automation. So we'll forget about those for now. The reason we've done that is to reduce the cost to acquire those smaller value contracts, and also to free up our sales team so they can actually focus on the higher value ones and really be personalized in their replies and in their outreach as well. So in the mid-market, which is the second column, we will be picking 3 to 4 segments at a time with about 100 companies in each segment. And we're starting with industries. So we're going to use industries as our segments. And then on the enterprise end, we're going to pick 10 target accounts across sort of the lower end of enterprise and enterprise generally. So the larger businesses, it's a really broad bucket. We're going to pick 10 accounts in 1 geography. And in this case, we're actually going to choose the wider San Francisco area. We have an account executive there. We have a bunch of technology companies there that we know are right. So that's what we're going to start in our first, I guess, cohort, you could call it. And then we've split, so created 2 cross-functional sub-teams to manage each of those 2 programs. And each sub-team is comprised of some marketing and some salespeople. And each team will co-design and co-deliver the campaign rather than it being such a marketing-driven campaign. So the first team will focus on the mid-market segments. Marketing will take a list and surface high-level brand ads to them to expose them to our brand before they receive outreach from an SDR. After a period of time, the SDR will then reach out to them with a co-designed outreach sequence, which starts off being personalized to that segment, to their industry and their problems, and then moves into talking more and more about LawView and how we can solve your more niche issues. And there is a lot of room for the SDR to personalize those emails into that company along the way. If a deal is created, it's passed off to an account executive to close, and that's just the bottom bit there. I've got the close is sales driven, which it always is. And so for this one, I've actually got a bit of a diagram on how we're going to do that. So 1 week, we're going to expose them to brand ads, and then for the following few weeks, we're going to do SDR outreach. And here are some examples of our brand ads. They're super high level. They're not even talking about the industry. They're not targeted whatsoever. These are just our kind of some of our best brand ads at the moment. The first one is not even about necessarily our product at all. It's just the 2022 in-house legal tech report that we created. The second one is introducing them to a framework with creative in-house lawyers. And then the third one introduces them to LawView as being a legal workspace for in-house lawyers. So very, very high level. We've just tried to make it really beautiful content that we just want them to think, okay, LawView brand, I've heard it, I've seen it. They don't even necessarily have to engage with this. So after they've been exposed to those ads, this is a high level summary. I'm probably getting super nitty gritty here, but that's just me. So yeah, this is some of our outreach sequence, and it probably won't make a lot of sense to you here because it is very niche to our product and to this industry. But essentially the first email is like a nod to issues in the healthcare industry, for example. And we want them to download that content. We want to just have a conversation. And that's the same actually with the second email. It's almost like a bump email. The third one is about HIPAA, and this is a very niche piece of information, very relevant to this industry. It's a security certification. You need to do anything to do with privacy in healthcare, and LawView has this certification, so we really want them to know this piece of information. And then the fourth one is, hey, we actually work with a bunch of healthcare companies. Do you want to see a case study? And then the last one is like ROI. So you can see it's kind of getting more and more and more specific as you go through. And ultimately, we want them to book a demo with the salesperson. So that's the mid-market one. Now, thinking about enterprise is quite different, because on the mid-market side, we need a larger volume of those to work. But on the enterprise side, we actually don't want a huge volume of them. We just need a couple in our customer mix to bump up our average contract value across all our customer base. So team 2 is also comprised of someone from marketing. It's got our chief product evangelist in there, and an account executive that works in our chosen region. And again, we're going to co-design, co-deliver the campaign, but it really does look very different. There's a way lower volume. We've only got 10 here. So the AE can take a lot of time and energy to research each account and get to know them very deeply, and every decision maker within that account. So again, start by surfacing those brand ads, just warm them up. But the activation after that can be way more personalized. So we can create content specifically relating to that company. Like, I don't know, one might be American Airlines, and we've noticed there's an issue with the industry and that company's appeared in the news or something. Like we can create content specifically around that. We could be reading their board report and seeing what, the chairman's worried about for the year, or whatever. What's their company's objectives for the year, and how can we make their legal team look good? We can do an internal workshop for their company. We can send them merchandise. Does the general counsel love basketball tickets? Can we organize a dinner at the end of the period? So it's a very different strategy, and one that takes a lot more time and energy for that smaller volume. So this is what we're currently launching at the moment, and I can't give you tangible results like I can with our first ABM V.10, I'll call it. Yeah, so I have really great hopes for this strategy though, because it's more, I guess it's more like a traditional ABM approach, but it does take some of the learnings we've got from the first version of ABM we've done. Are there any questions at this point before I kind of go on to my takeaways?
Yes, Bindy, we do have a couple in here, so I'll just start from the top. Caroline asked, what are your thoughts on ABM for expansion revenue programs?
So with existing customers?
I think so, yes.
Yeah, I mean, it totally could absolutely work, and it's probably the difference is who is controlling that program. I mean, in our business, we have a really big customer success team, because our product isn't out of the box. It's configurable. It takes a bit of onboarding and training. And so our customer success team are the ones that actually own those KPIs around expansion and upsell. And so I would say we would create a different team that had those people involved in it. But I think like that sort of enterprise version of activation could work really well. Has anyone had an experience doing it for upsell objectives?
Well, yeah, we have certainly. So, thinking about how we're growing accounts with new features or functionality or a new plan or product offering, absolutely utilizing it to grow revenue from inside revenue sales, really.
Yeah, awesome.
Another question. How do you find which company is at which revenue bracket?
Google. There's a lot of information out there. LinkedIn's really good as well. I'd say it's the other one. LinkedIn's really good for that.
Are you using any tools like Seamless.ai or what's the other one?
We use Zoom Info.
Zoom Info, that's the one.
Yeah.
That will give you some of that information as well.
Yeah.
For enterprise, the brand ads, how are you able to target those to just the 10 target accounts in LinkedIn?
Yeah, it's a great point, because you can only have, you need a minimum size of list. So what we'll do is include them in a broader audience, just to make sure that we can get them in there.
So you've got to have a minimum 300 in your audience size, but if you're targeting 10, Fortune 1000 companies or something like that, it doesn't take too much to build a 300 list.
Yeah.
All right. That's all the questions for now.
Cool. All right. Well, I'll just go through a couple of takeaways. The first one is that I think us B2B marketers are all on the spectrum, maybe literally, but definitely figuratively speaking. B2B marketing strategy, in particular ABM, depends on where you are on the out of the box to enterprise spectrum. So on the out of the box end, you kind of have a product where you enter your credit card details and you log in your way. On the other end of the spectrum, you have 12-month lead time, contract worth 100K, and a 6-month implementation, or a year-long implementation. So how you design your ABM program does depend on where you are on the spectrum. So replicating what another business has done with the ABM won't necessarily work for your company and your audience. On the out of the box end, marketing might automate more of that customer journey. We might not do ABM at all. In the middle, you probably are tag teaming between marketing and sales with more personalization. And then on the higher end, it's quite possibly mostly sales driven with really small lists, and probably an even more extreme version of that, that kind of ABX example I gave just now. You've got your close-knit round tables, buying the basketball tickets, you can tell I like basketball, if they're a fan, etc. So, and how much you allocate to those efforts depends on your ideal customer mix. Some companies only target enterprise, or they only target small businesses, and how much it costs to convert each of those ICPs, or ideal customer profile, I'll call it. At Lawview, we sort of sit in a range within the broader range. So we're somewhere in the middle. Our product takes about 6 months lead time or sales cycle. The contract value is about, on average, 35,000 New Zealand dollars per annum. And that's also in a range. So some might be cheaper, some might be a whole lot more. It takes anywhere from 2 weeks to 2 months to implement, depending on the customer, because there's an element of configuration, but not customization. And as I described with that ABX example, we're experimenting with involving more and more of sales to find our sweet spot on this spectrum. My second takeaway is that ABM can't be divorced from brand. So I'll go back to that LinkedIn feedback at the start, where they said we spent less money than our competitors, but we generated more leads. And the reason for this is probably sounds counterintuitive to a non-marketer. So we actually spent more on brand than our competitors. We spent 19% of our ad spend on brand awareness, while our competitors spent 0%, which was like totally mind-boggling to me and our digital marketing team. Like LinkedIn recommended to us that best practice is actually somewhere sort of like 54 to 46 is quite specific, but I guess they have all the data in the world to figure this out, as a ratio from lead gen to brand spend. So we've got heaps of room at Lawview to bump that up. And that ratio does depend on every business, and it requires experimentation, but we're still figuring our mix up. And it probably does also depend on if you're entering a new market. If you're entering a new market, you probably want to really go hard on brand as well. So yeah, having those sort of always on brand ads is crucial to the performance of your ABM. You really can't divorce the two from each other. Leveraging brand decreases your cost per MQR, it increases your conversion rates. It's not the first time they've seen your brand, and when they are confronted with your ABM material. My third takeaway is that specificity wins, and I won't dwell here because I think I've mentioned it quite a few times, but I can't not have it in my takeaways. The more granular you can get with audiences and content, the more engagement you'll get. The way we're optimizing our ABX is really with this intention: how do we get more and more tailored in our approach? This is kind of an interesting one. So I believe that understanding your product market fit and the competitive landscape isn't just the place of product marketing. If you can understand these, ABM can become more than just sort of like a lead gen source or an upsell source. Every interaction with your audience is a chance to build your brand, prepare them to buy, create a need for your product, and prepare them to actually use your product. So everyone's more successful, and that can just be done in your content. So the marketing's job doesn't just finish when you hand over a lead to sales. If a lead's being, well prepared to understand the problem and how your solution can help, they'll convert faster. If they're prepared to buy in your way of working, they'll onboard faster. And those are really great things for revenue. So it's really an opportunity miss if you can't incorporate those things into any of your campaigns or content or ABM activations. Yeah. The fifth one is that ABM should still be full funnel. So even within your ICP, your ideal customer profile, in your ABM activities, you can get full funnel. So I'm just giving an example here. Again, it's that high growth companies example of various types of content we have. We start with a very high level white paper for high growth companies, creating a successful in-house legal function in the high growth companies, quite high level. And also remember, before they get to that point, they've probably seen a brand ad. The second piece of content that we have there is a webinar with even more granularity. It's called Capital Raising and IPOs, the integral role of in-house legal. And then we have a customer story where one of our unicorn customers is talking about how Lawview's helped them become a high-performing and efficient in-house legal team. So it's kind of like a message to talk to various parts of the funnel. So this is something we can continue to improve at Lawview across all our segments. And yeah, my last takeaway there is that ABM is really a cross-functional game. It has to be a team effort. Some companies will create a literal like ABM team, and we're just experimenting with like a really light version of this at Lawview. But there's probably be a point where we have scale enough to need a dedicated ABM team. But if you're like us and you're not there yet, having great alignment between even within your marketing team and across your channel owners, so like digital marketing, social ads, field marketing is really important, and then your alignment with sales is uber important. If you can, designing programs together and delivering them together will just be so much more successful. So yeah, that's a quick summary on the top 6 points. And that's it. So thanks for having me. Please let me know if you've got any questions, or you can also reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'll be super keen to chat further and also hear about your experiences with ABM as well, or ABX.
Bindy, thank you so much. That's incredibly interesting. We've got a couple of questions here. What tools are you using to orchestrate the different ABM programs? Is it manual or automated or an ABM program? What's your tech stack?
Yeah, we don't have a specific ABM tool. So we're in just relying on Salesforce and Pardot for pretty much everything. Obviously LinkedIn a lot. Our sales team are using Outreach, but we don't have a dedicated tool, which I've actually struggled with the reporting side of things and Salesforce capabilities. So I'm really keen to hear if anyone's nailed that.
And how do you use persona targeting in shaping your message?
Yeah, great question. We're quite lucky at Lawview in that we don't have a whole suite of personas really. So the in-house legal persona is, we have a general counsel or the lead decision maker. They either lead the team or they're the sole in-house lawyer. And then we have a legal operator. And so we don't really have to diversify our content too much between the two. But it's certainly a consideration that I think is part of it. And you could even have, we've chosen industries as those segments, but you could segment it by persona as well, would be a different way to split your audience.
Yeah, so you're not really tailoring your ads or content to the different roles that those in-house lawyers would play.
We do in terms of like the SDRs out. So when the SDR kind of jumps in, it's where we want them to look on their LinkedIn page, and just even at a personal human level, like, you know, we want them to see that they're a thought leader in this area and we've got an opinion on it, or they really like this thing or the next thing. And so that might relate to their role, but it also might just relate to them generally as a person.
So the SDR role becomes so important. It's almost like they need to be able to be sitting in the shoes of an in-house legal counsel almost. Like, are your SDRs all ex-lawyers or wannabe lawyers?
No, but wouldn't that be great? Yeah, and they do, that's totally right. And that's why it has to be cross-functional, you know, like if this is only marketing driven and they're not on board, you know, you do all this effort to, you know, you're surfacing ads to this audience and you've got content that's relevant, but if they don't go the extra mile, it just all stops at marketing. And because it's really hard to, you know, at a persona level, you can do tailored content, but if you wanted to go that next level, it's really hard at scale to do that. So if you've got that SDR function, yeah, you've just got to use it.
All right, so just another quick question for you. We're almost up at time. If you've got another question you want to throw in, then please jump them into the message. LawView is a brand new category of product. How have you leveraged ABM to build that new category marketing and promote that from that new category perspective? What's been the impact of that, right? Because it's not like people aren't necessarily searching for the type of product, which is, I guess, why you're targeting, you know, those particular, you've got your target account list and you're really targeting specific companies and you're reaching out to them almost, right?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, there are a couple of ways. So in those brand ads, the problem statements, so for example, the research exposed a problem that our audience didn't know about. So for example, we're an all-in-one solution, and our audience to date uses really niche point solutions, a bunch of them. So the 2022 in-house legal tech report exposed how inefficient that is. The second one is around a better way of working. And then the third one is like, hey, a legal workspace is, you know, this is what it is, it's unique. So we hope they've engaged with that before they get to the ABM activation. Once they're getting like, say, industry level content, we weave it into the narrative. So it's kind of like, these are the trends, these are the problems, and a little bit at the bottom that's like, we solve these in a unique way. So that's just content, I guess, weaving it into everything we do. And then the last one is in the SDR outreach is like, once you get down to the pointier end, you know, we want to be talking about the unique kind of, I guess, value prop and our differentiation in those emails. So that's kind of that product market fit I was talking about. You have to know that and that alignment, because you're also relying on the salesperson to know the product deeply as well as the audience.
So how are you measuring the success of your SDRs?
Yeah, it's quite hard. We have started trying to monitor the contact of, so we can see like if they've attempted contact and had replies and stuff, and you can see and if they've converted, and you can see the differences between SDRs, like who's owns what contacts and which ones are performing better. But that doesn't lean so much on our team, but their team. And so, yeah, it's something we're probably learning on the fly, I would say.
Yeah, awesome. Hey, look, it's so interesting, and it's an evolving space, and there's so much, so many new tools and tech to help us do these things, and it's really good to understand how you've built and your team have built this program with LawView. Incredibly interesting. So thank you very much, Bindy. Round of applause for you, and we will and thank you to all of you for joining us this afternoon. And I will take the recording and we'll get it up on the website for everyone to be able to watch later as well. But thank you so much, Bindy, for your time. It's been incredibly valuable.
No, thank you everyone, and yeah, keep the conversation going and reach out.
Cool. Have a good afternoon, everybody. Thanks heaps.
Cheers. Bye.